All right. Well, welcome everybody back to our normal Wednesday night show. I know we've been talking about Pennsic 51 a lot in the last number of shows, but we were pretty active there. So we usually would like to do the heroic review and a number of other reviews. I would like to make sure. I'm hoping next year we can get a little bit more on the fencing side reviews. We barely 2 years ago we tried both at the same time and ran way over. I think this year we had a little bit trouble finding some folks to help out with that. At some point we will try to get that a little bit more under control. I really like to have Rapier as a big part of our channel as well. But today we're going to go through a bunch of classes we did really for, this is our second year there. We did a couple classes and presented at least the field so people knew what was going on at Pennsic 2 years ago. This year we set up a number of classes, about 4 or 5 a day, and we ran those this year. I think for we had a lot of participants. We had a lot of discussion. We had a lot of people watching, a lot of people doing. I think it went over relatively well. We had, a number of issues, some issues with how we presented, cameras, speakers, all of those kinds of things, because obviously we're doing this for nothing and we don't have all that great equipment. At some point I will hopefully get a little better at that, and maybe we're going to have another episode talking about how we can maybe get the channel a little better with ideas from everybody here and everybody online to hopefully help us make it a better place. Everybody wants to come visit. But for tonight, we have Sir Sivrid, who's going to be our producer and running and doing all our windows and moving us around and presenting a video. He has a busy night. I'd like to introduce everybody to Sir Guilluame. He is an Eldemarion Knight. He is actually coming on as a producer and a coach here as well. He helped a lot with the videos at Pennsic. Helped me. He and his wife helped me quite a bit, making sure I was out on the field and on time and things like that. We have Sir Bari, who watched at least one class because it was his. And and he'll talk about that, but he had a great class. We really enjoyed Barry's class. We kind of threw Barry under the fire there because I was like, hey Barry, you doing a class? He's like, huh? So and I told him next year he's going to be doing more classes, so he has to start thinking now. Well, I just told him now that he's
I got guilted into it last minute.
Mm-hmm. And then there's
not supposed to tell them that.
And then of course we have Sir Sadb or Countess Sadb. I tend to use her Sir title here just because I'm very proud of her, and it fits the channel a little better, and I think she likes it that way a little bit more right now. So but she was integral into creating the schedule and putting all that together, and a lot of classes. She really did. She started the ladder drills here well before COVID, and has been carrying through a lot of those. So we had a lot of discussion around ladder drills and things, and we'll bring that up later. But for now, I think what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and start presenting. We're going to present each day and each class in order on that day. All of these are going to be posted. There's our class schedule that we used for Pennsic. So you could see that we had a lot of classes and a lot of instructors. Hopefully if it really goes well and we get some things under control that really, especially the video, and also helpers to help on the videos and help on collecting this information. I'd love to be able to get more coaches, even if we have to double duty and split them up to come and do classes, or so that we can take them and hopefully share them with everybody, and especially those that aren't coming to Pennsic. But I think the key at Pennsic was to present it a little bit as a seminar of, here's a bunch of classes, there's a bunch of pickup going on. So if you didn't want a class, go out and do pickup. If you wanted some input while you're doing pickup, a lot of coaches are there to help with that input. So it really, in the long run, it was a great kind of fighter symposium, I think, as well. Our first class is going to be pre-stretching with Sir Boomy, who in this class I kind of presented him. I wanted him to do a couple of classes. We were going to do a pre and post, and really there was just time enough to do like pre with Boomy. He did the pre one, but he just covered legs in this video, and he was covering mostly stretching in the side of the legs. He did a talk. You can see he has a whole bin of tools behind him that helped us understand how we could help stretch our legs, how we could release muscles in those legs when we were tight, and really some core foundational stretching stuff. I don't know if everybody knows Boomy does a lot of PT work. I think that's what he does that as a living. He has his own channel as well. He's a mod as well. So you can see he's just kind of stretching that front leg. You can see how straight it is. You can see how not straight mine is. But, this is, the piece here it was a really nice way to learn about what good things to do to stretch your legs at the beginning. I think it's relatively important. We don't do enough of this. I used to, and I tended a little back from it, and we need to get back into it a little bit better again. Boomy gave me a couple of really good ones, especially for some issues I had. So,
I really enjoyed this one because this was really good for. I mean, I had a couple new hamstring stretches and quad stretches that I hadn't encountered before, and so for me it was really good. It was also really good because it also gave a bit of here's how to test what your flexibility is, and also how to see. There were a couple of internal external rotations while standing on one foot that were both balance and stretching that really challenged me.
Yeah, those were really good. I remember those. Those are. I really enjoyed those. Those were, I was surprised, especially the kind of testing yourself piece was a good one too. I thought that was really well done as well. So
yeah, I thought that was a really good point that he made throughout the course of the video when he talked about listening to your body and finding what the limit is and what your body will do, and working against that limit to try and push a little bit further, and not to stay in your comfort zone where you're not really developing anything, but to push further in a little bit further than what your body is happy with, just to be able to stretch that boundary. And it applies to more than just stretching. It applies in all aspects of what we do, really.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I'm looking forward. I'd like to get him. We did something at some point. I'm going to hit the right thing with him. He's, timing is hard because he works late Wednesdays and stuff. But I'd like to definitely get him in more classes. And this is actually where he's talking about how far your hand goes, and it's based on how tight your forearms are. And I was like, oh, that makes an incredible amount of sense. And he went through he talked about one hand compared to the other, and he did a really nice exercise and then talked about how you stretch those out and how important it is to get balance in your muscles.
Hey, if I could jump in here real quick, we were actually discussing this, the importance of stretching and physical therapy and stuff like that before we started the show. And every practice, it's funny because people think that I'm lazy because I'm the first person at practice and the last person in armor, but I do like a full 20 minutes or so of stretching before every practice. I mean, I'm 51 years old and I've got a lot of injuries, and I do it because I have to, but if I'd been doing it this whole time, I might not have needed it as much because a lot of us fight cold. I mean, I'm the only one at practice that stretches. So we're probably a very small percentage of people that actually do practice where they stretch, and a very large percentage of people that have injuries. So,
yep, I would agree.
Yeah, we try and lead our local practice in that sometimes, but we're not entirely consistent about it. So maybe this will spur us to do it every time.
Yeah, I got to actually go back and watch this again and pull a couple of them out of this because I remember the first day and it was very good. I would agree with her Majesty or Antigone. She's commented regarding she added a couple of things as well. So, all right. So let's go on to the next class, I think. We're going to rush through them a little bit so everybody knows tonight. I just updated our all of these are on our YouTube. I just updated our overall schedule. I'll have somebody actually pull that up and maybe even show you everybody where it is so that everybody can remember, know that it's out there for you. But here we are. I think, what class was this? This was
ladder drills day 1. So if you have not done ladder drills with us or been to one of our ladder drill classes before, this is definitely where to start, because you'll notice if you watch through the whole thing, we only cover a couple of pretty simple drills at the end. The meat of day 1 here is, you can see all of the gesturing I'm doing in the video right now. The meat of this class was really sort of setting up the foundation for the footwork. So getting your stance right, getting your posture figured out, finding your balance, and sort of building that little mental checklist of things that in your body you need to try and keep track of while you're doing the footwork, like why we really want to do it, what's the whole point of the ladder drills, that kind of thing. So this first one's a good one to just kind of listen to get that stuff. And then we broke up the actual teaching of my foot goes here and does that for the ladder drill across the 4 days so that we could actually dig into that after talking about this. So this is really the foundations class.
Yeah, and I think the big part here is, we we only have an hour to present these, and we have a lot of here today. This day we had some rain, but we had a lot of people in those, so we kind of had to rush, or not rush, but we were trying to help the people there to understand better. So we were, everybody's at a different level, so we have to present at a little higher level. And when you have a lot of new people on these, the first part of this is just helping them understand what they're doing, like why you have a ladder, your foundational, kind of foundational stance, like she's showing, being stacked in your body, a little bit on how your feet, but also the exercises. So you'll see that nothing, it's not all perfect here. We don't go dive in incredibly deep. There's a conversation on the SCA Coaches Corner about, concerned about ladder drills, essentially causing you to lift your feet. And that's really, your foot should be sliding along the ground. Very much like Paul Beltrick said, he's concerned that people are lifting their feet. The idea is your foot should be, this is the reason why we wear shoes and things like that, that are very like boxing shoes and things like that. So we can feel the ground. You're just gliding your foot. You're not lifting it off the ground and setting it back down. Those are spaces where you end up in danger. The idea here is just to glide and stop.
Caveat. I'll put a caveat. Some of the drills we do, especially the ones where we're focusing on like really quick foot motions, do pick up the foot a little more. Yep. But part of the explanation that you'll get listening through this one is, hey, this isn't necessarily 100% exactly the footwork you will do in a fight. It's more teaching your feet and your body how to move in a lot of different ways. So some of that is just, we're building agility. We're making it so that our feet can move quickly. It's not necessarily 1-to-1 exactly how you're going to move in a fight. Like there's a lot of layers to it.
Although a lot of them are. I mean, I tell you, I
more than we thought.
a lot more than you think, and a lot of shuffle. There's an episode I did on Sundays that covered each piece and where we see that in a fight. So there's definitely a lot of stuff here. Also, you can actually just practice that stuff. I found that the shuffle foot is a lot better than the gathering foot, right? And it's interesting because they just posted up some boxing stuff on the shuffle foot. So there's a lot of good stuff inside of almost any ladder drills, and you'll see them across most sports that are out there. So
yeah, I've got a quick question on how you got this set up. I see the ladder there. Is there something behind side painted?
Yeah, that's actually a painted ladder on the ground. So this is an example of, you don't need a ladder. We just use ground paint and painted a ladder in. It's a lot safer if you have any issues with your knees or stuff like that, because then you don't have to worry about tripping on anything.
So what color paint did you use?
Yellow.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it was easy to see in person, hard to see on the video.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And if you're going to be doing the ladder drills, you don't necessarily need to paint on the ground to be able to do it. You can use chalk on the driveway or tape in the garage. Countess Elisha does the footwork drills in the kitchen on the 12-inch tiles in the kitchen while she's having breakfast or brushing her teeth, and just goes through the motions on the tiles there. So and eventually you don't really need the ladder. It's more of a visual reference while you're learning the steps, but you can do the steps on any flat surface that you can walk on. So.
And is there a recommended size for these rectangles or squares or whatever?
Get 2 feet in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think anywhere from, it depends on how tight you want your footwork to do. Really, again, the idea is to have to move small, not big, long steps and things like that. So I've seen anything from 12 to 18 inches. I would stay probably inside that space. But I always tell people, don't worry. Don't get caught up with stepping on the ladder, making these perfect. The idea is that this is a guideline to help you keep your feet smaller.
Yeah. And I also want to throw out here just that I've been doing footwork exercises a fair amount this year. And something that a lot of people don't realize, like you might go through the exercises and think, oh, that was pretty easy. I got this. And it's not so much the ability to do the movement, but it's getting those movements ingrained so that when you're in a fight, you can think about other things, and this becomes automatic, and this sort of shrinks down that the OODA loop and how the timing becomes faster because you don't have to worry about this.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, one of the other things I really
have to think about, the better, right? So.
Yeah. One of the things I really appreciate about this particular video and what Sadb went through as at the beginning is you can go through a lot of agility boxing videos, everything else. I don't think almost any of them really cover that stacked body, that really how you need to be moving with keeping your shoulders over your hips, keeping everything straight for SCA fighting. And I think that's a really useful thing about this video. Even if you've seen other, ladder drills, if you've seen Lomachenko do them, whatever, I think they can do a great job. But I think this particular one is really useful in understanding how to position your body so that you make the best use of them.
We've spent years now, like tweaking and tailoring and refining these drills to be specifically for what we are doing, as opposed to generic or specifically for some other sport. So yes, like this video is probably at this moment the best one for getting all of that explanation in one place.
And just so everybody knows, I posted a link on the bottom of the page. You can't click on it, unfortunately, but it is our YouTube channel. If you go to the drills portion and pull up all the drills, you'll see that all the videos are posted there. I didn't publish them because then it publishes, and then a lot of people, I may publish them later on, one at a time. I didn't want to bomb that channel with what was going to be anywhere from 15 to 20 videos. But you can see here we had a lot of people participating, a lot of people learning, and including, and the best part about this exercise is we had a lot of knights participating. You can see them here, even some royal peers through here. And the idea is a lot of this they have never done. So it's an exercise in learning. And what you're trying to do is learn what you're, be more aware and comfortable in what your feet need to do at the time.
Yeah, I want to throw on here for anyone that's listening that maybe isn't a knight, or maybe they're far from being a knight. I mean, we're all knights here in this show, and Duke Sven's been working a lot with me in my two-sword fighting. And the last conversation we had, he was like, the number one thing I need to fix is my footwork.
Yep.
Now, my footwork isn't bad, but it's bad for the people that I want to be able to beat in tournaments. It's bad for a Duke. It's bad for someone who has good footwork. And one of the problems I have is I tend to take big steps. It comes from my track and field and my spear background, and it's a bad habit that I'm trying to get out of. But for me, my big steps often leave one of my legs hanging for a target as I'm throwing another shot. And I just had a nice long conversation with Duke Brennan on Sunday, and he had some lessons that he got from his knight, Duke Lucan, which was one of the things he was teaching me is that long steps take a lot of time, and that's a lot of time between the two that you can't change something.
And not only that, your opponent can take advantage of that time.
Well, that's what I mean. Specifically, it's like I'm making this big step. Well, actually, I'll give you an example. I fought Duke Cygnus a couple years ago, and I was taking really long lunges toward him and then had to get out of there. And he had, 500 OODA loops to watch that leg come through and come out and just decide he's going to take a quick shot at that leg while defending himself.
Yep. There's a ton in this. And, we can, if people are interested at some point, we can unhash a lot of that stuff. I really started breaking down people into really not only smaller steps, but even micro steps in some scenarios. And what I mean by really tiny, like 1-inch steps, depending on what range and you are at. So if you're at the edge of range where you both can throw, those steps have to be much smaller because that time is much smaller that you have reaction to. So it's helped a lot of people, especially on the higher end part of the game. It's helped those folks because they just never thought about that, and now they are. All right, let's move on.
So I just put up the next one, which is Brannos teaching coaches moving with your center. What's this one?
So this is an older class. I used to, I still do. I taught this a lot as I was traveling around for the last 20, 25 years, and it was the foundation of actually my movement classes. And what we were talking about in this class is how to not move with your feet, but how to move with your center. And what I mean by that, Sivrid has a cat raceway going over there. Anyways, here we talk about how a long step stops your center from being able to actually continue your movement. So a lot of times when we're moving forward, I move my center forward and then I step really small so my center can still keep moving forward because it's in front of me. And the same thing when I go backwards, that same thing. If you take a large step, that step stops you. If you take a smaller step, then you just keep flowing back because your center, your weight is carrying you forward and back instead. So this is the class we work on those. I work on that forward and backwards. And we also work on pivots in this class, how to fall out right or left. So this is all about how your center controls you. It's a lot like dance in ways, is that we don't want to be pushing or leaning or taking giant steps because then your center isn't actually engaged. You lose a lot of control. Go ahead, Sai.
All that foundational stuff for your stance and your balance and your body that we talked about in the ladder drills class, it all builds directly into this, and this builds directly back into the ladder drills. Like these two classes go hand in hand, just like this.
Yep, I was just going to say that too. It's a good complement. A lot of the footwork becomes much easier when you understand moving with your center first and leading with the hip and with the center to be able to move your body and have your feet go to the right places.
So yeah, we talk a lot, and a lot of this you can see I'm leaning over, showing people that a lot of people will lead with their shoulders. It's very European to hold breath higher in your chest because we want to broaden our shoulders and stand up straight and all of that. And what that does is pulls our center up a little bit. And what happens is then we start leading with our shoulders. But when you lead with your shoulders, what happens is they tilt down, and when you have that tilt, that's where your sword blows are coming from, right? You can't lift out of a tilt very well to a high headshot, where if you're nice and evenly balanced, you can still throw anything going forwards or backwards as long as you're stacked. And what I mean by stacked is that you're essentially straight up and down.
What do you mean it's very European?
Posture is a big thing in Europe, right? That English posture where you chest out a little bit and puffed up a little type of deal.
You mean like the Europe, like aristocracy?
Yeah. I mean, it's not only that for aristocracy. That all comes down. I mean, how many times were you told not to slump?
Well, I didn't listen.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot.
There's an example of it. It came down. We all got that for years. If you look in China, in the eastern parts of the world, they breathe a lot lower from their belly. It also, because we pull that posture up, it actually gives us a little less lung capacity because we're engaging muscles around those lungs. and tension around those lungs.
So how many people watching adjusted their posture when we started talking about it?
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about.
No more duck butt.
No more duck butt. That's right.
Now I'm slouching in defiance.
That's right.
There you
Well,
go.
and the good part is you don't want to slouch where your shoulders are forward, but you want to rest in your center. So you like just sit a little bit like you're just resting instead of I have to pull my shoulders back and you're adding tension to your body. But now you got good posture. Well, good posture for looks, but not necessarily for a lot of other things. So in this class, we also talk about how you can stop and go and control people. The push and pull comes out of this class. The pivots come out of this class, falling away, falling to do 45s. Tons of stuff comes out of this. I usually spend a lot of times. I could spend about 2 hours on this class easy. I've spent almost a half day before in some cases. And it's kind of funny because after we started ladder drills, I stopped teaching this class. And then at some point I looked and saw what was going on. And I'm like, wow, I forgot that we need to make sure people are engaged, making contact, reading people, and being able to hold those centers and be able to move forward and backwards. So I just kind of got back to making sure they were covering these things. All right.
And I think that's just one last point there. I think one of the biggest things that I still struggle with that this class covers is moving backwards, leading to the center, and not feeling like you're falling over. And so it's a really good course.
Yeah, this is trust, right? You have to learn to trust yourself. And Sadb's laughing over there
or you get your handy dandy knight to do the drill right behind you and put his hand right behind your back, so that if you start to fall over, it catches you.
I was pushing myself
around. True stories.
I was pushing myself around in a rolly chair on last practice just to work on it.
There you go.
All right, so do you want to go to the next one then?
Yep, let's go ahead.
All right, the next one is Early talking about rotational movements. And so he had this set up rotating around a sort of a pseudo Pell. And I did not go to this one, so someone else will talk about this one.
Sadb, you know what's going to go on here. Just go ahead and tell them what our rotational drills are like.
Basically, again, this was yet another one that sort of builds off of the ladder drills and the movement stuff that we were already talking about, and just this focuses on putting it all in a circle. So if you look back through our older videos from the middle of all the pandemic stuff, you'll see the ones in our garage where we literally taped a circle on the ground around our Pell to do this. Because it is one thing to do all of those footwork moves forward and backwards or side to side or at a slight diagonal. And it is an entirely different thing to try and do them in a circle and maintain your range at the same time. So putting the markers on the ground and that kind of thing, and just learning how to, he was just walking everybody through how to take all of those movements and footsteps we had learned and turn them into a circle that you can do around your opponent. A lot of focus on maintaining range, not drifting in and out.
Also maintaining your hips on your opponent. If you, the key there is, and Louis just kind of chopped in here, is that we want to make sure that, like, when you step with that outside foot, instead of just keeping your foot the way it is and actually losing control of your hips on your opponent, you have to turn that foot slightly when you're going around your opponent. We have a lot, and this is something that in the SCA, not all lots in the past, but it still happens now, is we don't rotate around people. We usually attack and bleed off either straight or to another angle. This exercise helps you stay in the edge of your opponent's range and not let them free of your tension. So it's a really important thing to think about. You'll see this a lot more in Eastern European boxing, where they'll kind of pin a hand down and they'll rotate around their opponent. But instead of rotating through, they're rotating around, and they're always maintaining a circle around their opponent, which keeps your opponent in tension all the time. If you can keep your opponent's hips off of you while your hips are on them, then you have the advantage.
And
So, go ahead, Seth.
One comment I want to throw in here, because it may or may not have actually gotten captured in the video, but something that I ended up helping some of the class attendees with off to the side, where they were sort of struggling to figure out how to make some of these moves work and couldn't quite figure out why. And what it came down to is these drills suddenly make it very evident and become even more important than anything else when it comes to your feet being linear versus staying apart, or whatever your stance is supposed to be. Because it turned out the whole problem was they couldn't make the move work, because every time they did the footwork steps and tried to go around the angle, suddenly their feet got linear, and it was then turning them away from the target. So something to think about and pay attention to if you are trying these drills at home and run into it, because I don't know that part was captured on the video. It was just me off to the side helping someone during the class. So
yeah, and one of the other things that's covered in the class is the doing rotational drills with a gather step, with a shuffle, and with a crossover, and the different distance that you cover with those. And
Exactly.
I don't know if we talked about it in this particular class, but at different times at which you'd use those different applications. Kanasulisha also posted, assuming this is when both fighters are standing, yes, we would not be doing rotation beyond a legged opponent to be able to move outside of the arc in front of them, so that we're not spiraling them or corkscrewing them. So this is typically applied when both fighters are on their feet.
All right, let's go ahead and move on.
All
I
right.
believe that's the end of day one, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's only taken us half an hour to get through day one.
There's a problem. There's 4 days here.
Let's see.
Okay,
Then
we'll
we
try to
have.
go a little faster.
Brannos
Well, I
had a
think they
long-
will, because there's some of them are part 2 and part 3 of classes. So
Yeah.
this again is actually part 2 of Boomy's stretching, and he was doing a lot more upper body with this particular class. But this was a lot of started off with this part with about testing what your flexibility was.
Yeah, that looks totally great.
And finding out that we didn't have any.
Yes, exactly. Super good. The arm stuff was really, really good. I have to say. So this is one of those that Sir Ingolf, who's had some shoulder issues, talked to Boomy after, and Boomy gave him a bunch of great exercises to do. So.
Yeah, I'm so glad to see these are posted now, because I was looking for them earlier to be able to revisit some of the stuff and start trying to do it more often. So I'm glad to see they're posted now, so I can go review them again.
Yeah, we
All right.
had to fight with Facebook to get the live streams downloaded so that we could get them onto YouTube.
Yeah, a little bit.
And one of the things he was talking about with these in this class is he's talking about, making gradual improvements towards stretching, making gradual pushing yourself. It's not a giant jump to all of a sudden being able to reach. So it's in this case they're using the mechanical aid of having a spear behind them, because if you can't reach your hands together that far, things like that. How do you make these so that you get to the point where you're just putting enough stress on to make it useful without hurting yourself?
Not even close. Not even close.
Good thing you're a spear guy. You have one laying around. All right.
Luckily I'm off screen, so you can't see how bad mine is.
So, Brannos, there's one question that just came up here from the previous video,
Sure.
which I'm going to pop up, which is on the rotational movement. How do you easily transition from rotation to sliding and back and forth, which is something we do in practice a lot, but it's just a matter of
So the good part about that is it's a lot of the same foot movement that's going on. The big difference is where your center is moving you. If you're rotating, your center is going to be moving you slightly forward on an angle, and how your foot lands. So when you're going side to side, your feet tend to land like this all the way through, right, side to side. Where when you're doing a rotation, you turn your heel out so that you can still do a rotation around your opponent. Because if you don't turn, then your hips are going to be off and it gets harder and harder to rotate. So, but the footwork itself is the same if you're doing a gather step or a shuffle step or a back step. The footwork is the same from side to side movement to rotational movement. And that's the same thing goes for ladder work, by the way. We showed a lot of ladder work going forward and backwards, but those could be on 45s. Those could be side to side. Those drills can be done a little bit more flexible. In fact, at some point we got in the summer, Sir Louis got so good at it that he wanted to kind of push himself. So he broke it up to forward and backwards movement and changed it up in the middle of the movement. So there's a lot of different ways you can make that work.
So as we're just finishing up, just moving to the end of Boomy's part 2, he also talked a little bit about using stretching bands, using different stretching equipment to help with stretching as well. So he does cover that a little bit in the end of this video if you're looking for that.
Yeah, that was good.
All right. So then day 2, that is day 2. Day 2, second class was continuing ladder drills.
Part 2. So, like I said before, day 1 was really the foundations, a lot of focusing on your body, your stance, and then we learned a couple of real basic drills. So for day 2, we introduced some variations on those drills. Let's try doing it backwards. Let's try switching feet, that kind of thing, and learned a few more drills that kind of built on the basics. So we probably don't need to talk at length about this one. We can let this be a short one. But this was introducing some variation and sort of the next couple of drills, skill level wise, still focusing largely on sort of your basic drop steps and that kind of movement.
So hey, one thing I'm observing by looking at these videos is watching Sivrid and Brannos do them versus just about everyone else. So clearly, if you do them frequently, you get better at them.
Yes. Yeah, day 2 is where I inadvertently demonstrated, smooth upper body by holding my mug the whole time because I was dying of thirst. So I just never put it down.
You should have balanced it on your head, like that.
No, but and that is the trick is it's really that smooth movement. Remember, smooth is fast. We talk about that in other shows. This develops that smoother movement. So, and it's interesting because last night, now that I'm retired, I got to stay home and go to fight practice, and I absolutely loved it. And I worked really hard on feet last night and being with my opponent all the time, which was probably a little bit of, it probably was a little bit painful for others, but it was really enjoyable for me. So it's really, once you have this piece in play, you're traveling with your opponent almost as a second thought because you don't have to think about it as much. And then all you have to do is look for those opportunities. And here you can see we go from forward and back to side, right? So that same thing kind of happens. And you can see we can work on angles, all of those kinds of things. So, all right, let's move it.
All right. Our next one is going to be a Brannos class. If I can get this to load up properly. It's going to be using movements for offense and defense.
Yep. So this one is the idea of manipulating your opponent with movement. And that movement can be forward or back, which is push or pull. That movement could just be, quick steps to one way and go the other way. That movement could always be, defensively, that movement is tracking your opponent. In other words, if your opponent, you can see here, we're working a figure 8 here. This is an exercise we do. But the idea is that we're always in gear with our opponent. And then when we see weaknesses in that movement, we take advantage of them. But while you're always in that same place, your posture is good. Your defense is the same no matter where you're going, because you're always facing your opponent. You can see here, I shift over, and the other person, if you turn your body, what happens is they are actually one beat behind you. So here I could take a half a step and get them to turn their upper body and then go the other way. And then, so I'm manipulating how they move based on what I have seen earlier. So this class is a lot about how to use movement to build to build opportunity to strike your opponent, or defensively to build better places to make sure that you're not giving up, weaknesses. So we do all this movement. You might as well use it for something, right?
There is a reason why we do.
So this is. Sorry, go ahead, Sadb. This is the practical for the putting the theoretical to work from all the other classes.
Yeah, and this is a good example of the fact that each of these things we do all the and oftentimes people are like, well, why do you spend all this time doing footwork drills? And it's like, if you don't have your feet able to move here, if you're concentrating on your feet while you're trying to move your opponent or trying to move around your opponent, you're concentrating on your feet. You're not concentrating on how to actually do something in the fight. And so by separating those out and working on one and just getting that down, then you don't have to think about your feet. And now we can move on to saying, okay, now how do I make an opponent move?
Yeah, ultimate, you can see that this is that rotational movement we talked about. And I use this all the time when fighting. It just depends on how far I want to rotate around my opponent, depends on which step I use. I may use a gathering step if I don't need to go as far. I may use a skipping or a shuffle step if I need to get farther behind them or shock them a little bit more. So this is where I use that. See how they turn the upper body, and then I went the other way.
Yeah, and I'd like to throw in here because I think Sivrid was talking about, concentrating on your feet versus concentrating on something else. And just to drive this point home to anyone listening, it's not even so much concentrating. I'm sure that almost anyone who's fighting does not think that they're struggling with their feet, because we've been walking since we were babies. It's pretty easy to move around, but it's these little tiny levels of clumsiness that does actually take up some CPU as you're doing it. So you watch the way these movements are; they're smooth. I mean, this is just this is taking it down from you're using 10% of your brain to using 0% of your brain and doing it properly and doing it fast and smooth. Because I don't think, for example, when Brannos fights, he's in a situation where he thinks, I'm going to use a compass step here, and I'm going to keep my plastic. It happens. It gets in the lizard brain. It's automatic.
Yeah, your brain just says, I need to be over there now, and then your feet do it.
It also helps you get rid of bad habits like long steps, especially at different distances. It helps you, and I have another class later in attention. It helps you push tension on an opponent when you need to, and things like that. But ultimately, you're 100% right. You figure out where you need to be, and the steps that you need to do there to get there safely are already in place, right?
Do you guys work with bands at all?
Not a lot. You're thinking about making the step shorter and things like that.
The boxing,
I have seen some people do it. We usually watch feet a lot.
Threatened it.
Yeah, I have threatened it a lot.
Done it.
I think the other thing, the comment, I think Barry made earlier about comparing someone who's just starting doing these versus Sadb and Brannos who've been doing these for a long time now, that's the nature. It's also reflects it in their fighting, is that, okay, they're able to put these into their fighting, move smoothly. And so when Brannos slides sideways or when Sadb slides sideways, you don't see the head go up and down to predict, to telegraph that motion. You just get okay, they've just moved over now. Did they do it with their feet? Did they do it with their upper body? And as a response, you have to think about what they did to get there. And instead of just going, oh, they went up and down. Well, that was pretty obvious what they did.
Yeah. By the way, that was very hard for me to internalize, because one of the sports I grew up with was playing basketball. And you've heard the phrase head fake. That's a very big thing in football and in basketball, because you're trying to get your opponent you're trying to make a big fake to get your opponent to move their body so you can go past them. And I found out the hard way that doesn't really work well in the SCA.
So in some ways it doesn't. You're right that specific one doesn't. But up and down 4-dimension, to get all your different movements side to side and up and down will manipulate your opponent, right?
Okay.
So don't give away your up and downs, because those are important as well.
I don't think they're as pronounced, though. They're not as big. Yeah. I got a question about the footwork here. I'm wondering, is there are there like different schools of footwork or stylistic differences? And what I'm thinking of is, for example, like Muhammad Ali, versus like maybe a Mike Tyson or even like a karate guy or something. Because I think Muhammad Ali tend to like dance and bounce around a lot, like around.
Muhammad Ali was very smooth, right? He still did shuffle steps. He still did all of those steps, but he was very smooth. He had a much longer body. If you look at his fades, are all cross behind steps, and he is just smoothly going away from stuff until he could change his body balance and then start fighting again because he's pulling people into him. Where Mike Tyson, his were really fast and sharp movements. But he had a lot of little like shuffle feet and stuff like that to get to side of the opponent. We actually practiced both of those steps. But depending on what type of person you are, like Barry, you're having super fast feet for you is going to be difficult because of your height. So the trick is, how do I make it different? How do I use my height in the way I need to? How do these feet fit into what I do? Here is all about smooth. Your shuffle step is probably going to be another 6 inches longer than ours.
Right.
The trick is to make it nice and smooth. Your backing like shuffle step, especially a back step behind, right, could be huge like Muhammad Ali's, right? So but it's going to be smoother compared to somebody that's smaller who's going to be like, hey, he was just there, but now he's over here.
Right. Okay.
And really powerful in those movements.
On that note, I think a fabulous example of this is find any video, especially recent video, of Brannos and Rongvalder fighting. Brannos is much quicker and faster and smaller and more sort of, high energy with his motions and with his footwork and with all of that. Rongvalder does a lot sort of slower, smoother, more flowy with it. And obviously, like, they both train together off of a lot of the same philosophy, but it plays out different, just like Brannos was saying, because our bodies are different, the way we move is different, everyone's, muscles are different, that kind of thing. So yes, there's definitely different versions out there.
So what I would say to that is, I think the way they're moving their feet mechanically is probably very similar. It's the intention in which they're using their feet and how they're choosing to step that's different. And so a lot of it is physiological, based on how people are built and how they can move, and the way things are going to work differently because of that. But there's only so many different ways that you can move your body without breaking yourself. And so it's a matter of which subset of all the possible ways you could move that you choose to use in the fight.
Yeah. I want to add something here too. I was just talking to Duke Brennan about this weekend. I think there are some exceptions, and we have to be careful, because everyone, if they find the right way to be uncomfortable at first, goes, "Well, I must be an exception then," and it's kind of like move on doing the thing. But so, for example, if we're talking about, I know with melee spear is going to be different than our single sword and shield and two sword fighting. So melee spear is going to look a lot more like an Olympic fencer, with lots of long lunges. The angles aren't such a big thing, because I can move side to side and I'm only gaining a degree or two, because I'm 10 feet away from somebody. And I also know 2 exceptions. I don't know if they're good exceptions, but it works for them. And I'm thinking of Duke Vlad out of Atlantia and Sir Donan, both polar out of the East. Both polearm fighters, like 6'6", large guys, and they take very big, long, like loping steps. And again, I don't know if Vlad won with it. So
I think you're 100% right. A lot of this, really, the key is distance. So the closer you are, the smaller steps you usually want to take.
Okay.
The farther you are, the bigger steps you want to take, because it creates larger angles.
Interesting.
Okay. Also, in defensively, the farther you are away, defensively, you're already safer. Where closer, the smaller steps, they have less time. It gives them less time to react. So those are all parts of the fight.
All right. So do you want to? Next video was actually more of a discussion. That was a discussion led by Duke Donegal. His Grace was talking. Let's see. The title of this particular one was "Principles of Fighting and Training Others." And I only caught the last part of this one. Brannos, you want to?
Yeah. So, I mean, we did, I guess the trick here is we did a couple of discussions because we had some Dukes, obviously multiple in a couple cases. Well, in most of the cases, more than 2 times they have won. They had some topics. They were, some philosophies around how they do things. And we wanted to give people an opportunity to listen and participate in those conversations. And that was the really good part about this. Here, Donegal's talking about his training methods and philosophy, both as the trainer and as the person being trained. And that was his class that he presented here. We have a couple of other of these, or at least one other of these done by Duke Morgan later. But this was nice because there were a lot of great questions by the people in the room. And it was a nice way for people to get a chance to actually ask questions from some great fighters around the society. So it was really nice that, he spent some time and wanted to come out and help others.
All right. Other comments on this one? Otherwise, I'll go to the next. That brings us to the end. Is that the end? No. Yeah, that's the end of day 2.
All right. On to day 3.
Moves us on to ladder drills part 3.
I wonder what this is about.
And so this, in order to give Siv's voice a break, William and I assisted leading these ones, and this was more moving sideways, quick feet. So this has a lot of sideways movement down the, and as William's demonstrating there, very quick feet, how fast you can move while still keeping your body and your shoulders in position and well up. And then how we move sideways along as opposed to just, so we talked about rotation, we talked about forward, and this is then moving more laterally. And this has things like switching your feet, moving sideways with more of a jab step, and different ways to throw shots in that space.
Yep. I think that's the big piece here. So we went from a little bit more smoother and drop steps to a lot of quicker feet, changing feet to change distances so people could see how that works. We do, Rumgalder actually does this a lot. We do it I think a lot of people actually do this without even knowing it. They'll move that sword foot forward and then do stuff. In this case, what's happening is you're making a quick shift in that foot, just like they do in Thai boxing. And just standing in the same position, if you switch your feet, your opponent has to think about what happened to the range. And that, again, you're making your opponent think. And that's a big part of breaking their game down.
And so this has just more examples of doing some of those quick feet, quick motion. And of course, everything we do forward, we have to do backwards, thanks to Ron Welder. And just learning how to make some of those things smoother. And so again, this particular one is quick feet. So the next one after that was a really good class, and that was Her Majesty Antigone.
Yeah, this was a great class, actually. I've actually watched this. So she did this one at that Ethelmark, the big Ethelmark event, fight practice they threw.
Adult Swim.
Adult Swim. She did that here. I actually think she did even a better job here at Pennsic. So it was very, very nice to see it in person.
And my video is doing something goofy here, but okay.
Yeah, having some issues.
It does not want to go full screen for some reason, but whatever.
I might have missed it.
Watch it at home on your computer. You can make it full screen.
I know Antigone was on earlier. I don't know if she has anything she wanted to mention off the chat, but this was really great for looking at people with different body types and different body sizes and how training works differently depending on where you're fighting from.
Go ahead, Barry. You were going to say something.
Yeah, what was the name of the class? I don't think you guys said it yet.
Body mechanics for small fighters.
In the East Kingdom, Sir Tanaka does this a lot. He calls it short foo. That's what he calls it.
Yeah, this is a nice class because it helped, I think, both trainers and, shorter people. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm short, I got to go take that class. But as a good, if you want to be a good trainer, you have to understand what they're seeing. And she explains this very well.
Nice.
She also explains some of the other difficulties smaller people can have, like power generation and things like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. Again, it's at 6'3". Sometimes I'm a short fighter.
Yeah.
Sometimes I fight someone who's taller. So even if someone who's 6 feet tall might think this doesn't apply to me, you know, sometimes it's situational. You can fight someone 6 inches taller than you.
Right, because the class isn't just about short. It's really about anyone with a smaller frame or just body mechanics that don't rely on being either tall or having lots of mass or both. So small fighter doesn't have to mean short. And the mechanics that work for shorter and or, you know, smaller framed fighters in general will still work for other people as well, like you're saying. So it's how to do your body mechanics without relying on size or mass.
You know, I'll say this, and just to relate to this a little bit, I weigh 200 pounds, which is it's not small, but it is actually below average for the SCA. And before I got knighted, I had this situation where I was defending a hut. They charged in, and I was expressing this to Sir Don, and I said, boy, when those guys rush in, I just jump over the hay bales and take the death and go to the res point because there's nothing I can do. He's like, no, there's nothing you can do. You can do this and you can do that. And I was like, Donan, you weigh 80 pounds more than I do. I can't do it. Not safely.
Yes. And that's exactly what she talks about a lot in this video. And the other good part is if you're looking to understand, and sometimes two different people saying stuff come across differently. She also explains the way they throw, including, you know, Duke Sven, and how they throw their blows very well. So if you're looking for, you know, like I kind of understand what he's talking about, go to her video because she might click something that really makes you understand that at a deeper level.
Nice. By the way, I don't know if she covers this at all, but I was talking to Thora. Is she a Duchess? Oh,
no, she's actually Her Highness right now.
Yeah, she'll be a Duchess soon. That's right. But if anyone knows Thora, she is teeny tiny, very, very fit. But I was talking to her at Pennsic, and she'd said something to me once I never considered before. But she said, yeah, when I do bridge battle, she's like, I always take the outside. So if anything gets bad, I can just jump over the hay bales. Yep.
All right. So the next one after this one is going to be Duke Morgan talking about timing. Let's see if I can actually I'm going to hold on just a second.
You probably close a couple of windows. And
that's what I need to do. I said, talk amongst yourselves for a second for while I do get to this.
So this class was interesting because it's the theory on his timing was much different than I've heard other people talk about it. And a lot of it came down to kind of taking things out of the OODA loop.
That's what I watched today.
What's that?
That's the one I watched today before the show.
Yeah, it's interesting. And that's how he looks at it. I mean, he looks at like, I'm not worrying about all those other things. I have a thing I'm going to do and I'm going to do it. And based on what happens like right at the beginning. And then he throws out the rest of the figure out, you know, all the like two other pieces of the OODA loop. And there was a lot of conversation in this class that was very good. It was nice that everybody engaged it as well as they did. And again, this was just a conversation to make people think differently. And I think that's super important. And I think that's one of the strengths of our art that we do, our martial art that we do, is that we have a lot of input from a lot of people. I've gone to martial arts seminars, and you may have, you have your normal instructors there, and then you may have a number of, you may have one traveling instructor and then maybe some instructors out of other schools. But that one traveling instructor who's actually setting up that class is usually the one that everybody's listening to, and they're just trying to work on something. So here we not only cover the physical, but, we want to make people think as well. And I think that's a big part of becoming a good fighter.
We were just having a conversation about a bunch of us drove up to the Nutley practice last week, and one of the guys in our area was commenting how, speaking of Duke Brennan specifically, and how Duke Brennan was fighting a much more athletic, faster fighter, yet Brennan appeared to be faster because he puts himself, cuts out those pieces of the OODA loop and puts himself in good positions to be able to throw quickly. And that's where I think a lot of this is good, is learning those mental aspects of the game that can make up for some physical, aspects.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Morgan talks about, and I wasn't able to attend all of this class, so I think he does in this class, but in other conversations I had with him while at war, he talked about timing beats speed. Yeah. If your timing is good enough, it doesn't matter how fast the other guy is. If you time it right, then you'll be able to beat him.
All right.
As I personally get older, more on the melee side, but I feel like my spearing hasn't gotten any worse. It's gotten slower, but I put myself in better positions, on the field every year, and I'm sure that applies to singles as well. Just getting yourselves in better positions and better situations, and so as we all age and get physically slower, we can still get faster.
Yep.
The next one on this class was this was working the offside by Earl Louie, and so it's talking about offside shots, talking about that Molinet into the offside, and a couple other things he throws, which are painful to me, at least when he hits me with them. And part of it's getting the hip mechanic, part of it's getting the sword across the body, and how he's getting that sword into the offside body, into the offside head. So just the mechanics behind this kind of shot. So,
yeah, I think the good part here is Louis has a couple of methods to show this with some specific technique stuff that he does really well. And this is the reason why I really wanted him to do this class, was that he'll show some different ways to engage how the technique works, because this is a little bit of the push hip along with that offside throw, which is significantly different. It's kind of interesting because even through COVID, like we were throwing a lot of offside arm. Actually, Sadb had a great offside arm Molinet that she used to do a lot, and Louis had a little bit of a rough time for a while getting that to work. But man, once he got it to work, it really worked really well for him. He became the guy who threw it probably better than anyone else at that point.
You doing that under the shield kind of leg shot thing right now? Is that what that is?
Yep.
Yeah.
And part of this is interesting because this is actually really driving that hip into it. And oftentimes people will throw, I know I do this, I'll throw that just with my arm. And it's really hard to get enough power just with your arm when you're throwing that shot. But he's really working on putting that hip forward into that shot.
Yeah, the big piece on that is the angle of your sword as it comes in. Because when you pull the hip back, your angle of your sword is actually pretty much aligned with their shield. So when you pull that hand back, your basket is where their shield is, and you're getting blocked. But if you can keep your basket on the other side of your opponent and flip your sword back, now the shield is taken out of the whole method, right? And the idea is your body turns. It's relatively, and it can be very dangerous. I started this one way long ago. And at first, all I was doing is pulling people to throw out my head, and then I would duck them and throw that offside leg. And then I realized how to freeze them, throw that same leg. And then it's all about timing now. And so that's why it's a really nice throw. And this throw, just because he throws it at the leg, it's the same throw at the arm. So you can actually shoot on the outside of the arm. By breaking your hand back, you're coming outside their basket into their forearm.
This is going to sound silly, but I got to say, from all these videos, the sky has just absolutely been gorgeous. And I feel the video, if you're not there, it really doesn't capture just how hot and muggy it actually was.
It was pretty miserable.
It was miserable.
Yeah, last year's weather was much nicer. Let's not do this one again.
All right, let's go ahead and move on.
All right, so the next one is one with his This is Grace Brannos teaching about tension control. And this is one of the other things that I've learned way too much on the receiving than on the giving.
So I teach this class a lot. I taught this one actually during COVID too, for Aidenvelt, a rum. And here I'm just talking about how I put tension to one side, my head goes one side, and then I'll switch it really quick back to the other side, so that your opponent's always changing. So if I push on one side, you start reacting, and I change to the other side, immediately in your head, the only thing you're thinking about is I have to go back, right, and cover the other side. And then I change again, and you're going to the other side. Meanwhile, this is a relatively easy exercise to do with my head. I'm not thinking about it at all. I'm thinking about when you're open to hit you. So
yeah. Speaking of which, so would this be an example of how you can apply a head fake in SCA?
Yeah, 100%, right? I do this all the time. So I've been showing people for the last couple of years, and most of the people I show are all dukes and things like that. And that is, I'll have them just go straight back, and I'll walk straight at them. No head movement, no nothing, right? And they can stay perfectly away from me. I'm not trying to run them down or anything, but I'm trying to catch them, and they'll stay perfectly distanced from me.
Yep.
And then as soon as I start moving my head as I walk forward, and I'll be like, I'm going to throw over here. I'm going to throw over here. I just look to either side of their nose. What happens is, as you shift to one side, you plant on that foot, but I'm traveling forward, and now you're traveling side to side in between backwards. So you break down that distance really fast.
That's interesting. I notice I see some foam swords in here.
Yeah, we do a lot with foam.
Yeah, I bit the bullet and bought a bunch. And
no, that's good.
Yeah, no, it's been nice. It's been nice for a lot of reasons. Even like I came up, I worked with Sven on. I keep saying I worked with Sven. He worked with me on Friday, and then I came back on a Wednesday. And like I said, because of my injuries and stuff, I really couldn't fight on Wednesday. So, but I brought the foam swords up, and there were some things that I wanted to work through that he talked about that I wasn't quite understanding. We just got the foam swords and some shields out, and we're able to do some things. And we didn't even go full speed. But it's just like if someone accidentally swings and hits you in the head, it's not going to be a hard thing, or in the fingers.
We use them a lot at our practice with new people who come. They're just like, they no armor, no nothing. So we'll give them a foam sword, and we'll just be the practice dummy. We'll be a live practice dummy for them. It's also very good to allow and build confidence in people on techniques or sword blows they throw. Because if you let somebody hit you in a perfect gap without closing that gap, it's like, here I am, there's the gap, throw the gap. Yeah. And if they throw the gap 4 or 5 times and you start tightening that gap and they still can hit it, they're like, hell, I can do this. And you know what the biggest part of throwing a good blow is? Believing you can do it.
Right. I also like sometimes I use it to kind of overwhelm someone. And I don't want to, let's say if it's a fighter that's got no awards yet or anything, I don't want to beat on them, right? I can take a foam weapon and do that, and then eventually they kind of start to gain some confidence, start to learn that they can do those blocks without having the punishment of the pain.
That's exactly it. That's a real good one for long weapons too. So that you don't worry about the hands as much.
I think one of the good advantages of using the foam weapons too is less wear and tear on the person throwing the shot on their joints, and less wear and tear on the person being hit with not being hit as hard as often. And so I find that using the foam, I can fight a lot longer. I can work on techniques a lot longer when I'm trying to do training. So I really liked being able to pick up the foam weapons and start using them more often.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so the next one is then that ends the day 3. We're moving on to day 4. And day 4, we had a morning class, which was the spear class from Bari and Pellinor. Bari, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. So I watched this video, and the number one thing I learned about it was I hate my tunic.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be armor. Oh, I like that one. I'm teaching the runaway technique. Yes, that's run away and don't get hit. Stay alive. No, this is a good class, and I'll say from the perspective of doing the classes, I didn't really think anybody was going to show up. Spear is not, people don't really focus on as much as other weapons forums. And I was happy to see that. What the hell I'm doing there? I was happy to see that you know, a bunch of people actually showed up, and it was the first class of the day. And we just kind of hit on, you know, we had to get a feel for who all was there, and so we're like, we realized we had a handful of brand new fighters, we had a handful of, you know, medium level, and we had some really experienced fighters. So we just kind of hit a little bit of everything. And then Brannos and Pelner were there to sort of you know, give their own perspectives on things, because they're both very experienced spears as well. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell. And I tell everybody, the number one thing I can tell you about spear is to type SCA TOK spear into YouTube, and I've got like 20 videos on there. So.
Yeah, so this one has a little bit of Brannos there doing some of the his style of throwing shots into basically into that pocket, and then, but it also at the end goes into Pelennor, and one of the things that Pelennor does really well is you see that little dangle mace in his right hand. Go back here a second, and Brannos charges, and Pelennor is already ready. He'll go from set there to having the mace drawn and in his hand and hitting you in the face as soon as you approach and close on him. So he talks a little bit about that mace, about using that mace, and how effective it can be in a melee when you're a lone spear fighter.
The good part here is he also talks about like distance on the lanyard on that and how all of that fits. So it worked pretty. You know, it was a really nice class, probably better than some of the other ones. I understood in this one a lot better.
Yeah, he had a good way of showing too, the way you grab it and you pull up from behind. You know, so it's ready to swing rather than grab it and try to pull out in front, right where the person's running into you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so how you flip it up, how you get it in your hand really quickly, how it just slots into his hand rather than and having that lanyard the right length is a key portion of that, and also having it work with your gauntlets is a key portion of that. So
that's like, we have a person in my household that that fights with a backup weapon a lot, and his spear work is good. But it's not as good as his spear and backup weapon. So what happens a lot of times, like I said, you saw earlier in the video, I was showing people how to run away, which may sound silly, but watch the video. It makes sense. You know, there's a technique to running away and coming back and stabbing people and make yourself effective. But instead of running away, as a lot of people expect, you know, he'll pull out that backup weapon, and all of a sudden now he's like a Madu fighter. You know, he's got, you know, this long spear protecting him, and then he can hit you with his fish bat. And that's kind of what Pelennor was showing here.
And then the next one, not surprisingly, we have part 4 of ladder work.
Hooray!
This particular ladder work one is all about moving and rotating, stepping across and rotating your body as you're moving. So it's really to try to think about how you get your body rotating first in shorter steps, and then we move into a longer step sequence. 8 different ways to do this particular variety of steps, and they're not necessarily things that you would just like all the other steps, they're pieces, parts, and moving smoothly, being able to rotate, being able to say, oh, I need to be able to be behind that person and rotate it the other direction. How am I going to do that without thinking about your feet? You just say go. And so a lot of this is then working together with that rotational drills, rotational footsteps. So this is all stuff that goes also as you go past, but also when Brannos is doing his pressure drills, a lot of the same footwork comes into play as you're stepping around, applying pressure in different directions.
You know, the funny part of this video is Hawk was just here. Sir Hawk was here as well. As I'm looking at the video to give you guys a feel for how this works. Sadb, Sivrid, Hawk, you know, Guilluame have all been working on this a lot in the last couple of years, and they all got knighted in the last couple of years. So
there you go.
Success stories.
Nice sales pitch.
Yeah, you have several success stories with this.
I would say that the original, the beginning of this video looked a little bit like the custom auto shift.
It is actually. That is the Tyson step right there.
There's a Tyson step in the beginning. There's a triangle step, and then we move into the full longer rotations. So day 3 was fast feet. Day 4 was rotations. So then the next one we did after that was Duke Sven.
Is this where he beats the crap out of me at the beginning of this video?
But we don't want to miss
right here.
that, so don't go past that part.
Yeah, this is like what a Spaceballs. Fast forward through this. No further.
No, go ahead. Let's see. Oh, here's a perfect. There we go. So this is a really it's amazing how many hits he did a private class on this actually in Louis and Si's backyard.
How many hits he got on me? Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, well, about as many hits as he has on that training video, like a couple thousand. But but this is actually a really good exercise. I've actually had a couple of people ask. I think a lot of people are like, well, they're not real swords and they're super fast. But I think that's his point in this exercise is this is a reaction exercise. And the idea is if you can pick up these fast pieces, all of a sudden the slow stuff becomes easy.
Yeah, I mean, look at how quickly he's throwing, and he just keeps hitting me, right? Let me see how frustrated I am because his reaction time is just so quick.
Yep.
And this is one that really works on the reposting as well, because it's one thing that the SCA oftentimes doesn't work with is, well, how do you fire back as soon as your own weapon's been hit? How do you?
It's also important to get your weapon back to a blocking position.
Yep.
By the way, I do think I hit him a couple times in here.
You did?
I'm thinking of editing this and making a little short SCA talk video where I can show people how to hit someone.
You know what? If you do that, please let me know because I'll be like, look what this guy just did to Duke Sven. You'll get a lot of attention later.
I will get some bad bruises on my ass next Adult Swim if I do that.
Some one-on-one attention, yeah.
So I think the nice thing with this drill too is that it's not you're taking turns trading the shots back and forth. You're starting both right-handed, then one right-handed, one left-handed, both left-handed, and then the other right and left-handed. And so you're getting to work both same weapon against same weapon hand and opposite weapon hands, and working all four different matchups there. So you're getting a lot of variation in that, and you're working both sides fairly evenly. But as you pointed out, the idea that the weapons are light and so they're fast, and so you're learning how to block against fast weapons. And then when you are working against rattan, the rattan shots typically aren't as fast, and so the idea is that by being able to be quicker in your defense, you should be able to pick up those shots a little bit easier. And so I had not heard that part of it explained by Duke Sven before, but he explained that at one point during this video, and I think it's a pretty interesting take. And certainly the weight of the weapons, throwing the weapons, you can feel the difference of the weight. And I haven't had a chance to do this particular drill a lot, but it is one that I want to be able to do more, to be able to get a feel for that and learn to be better defensively with my sword, as well as working against that faster attack.
So one thought I had here, and I think some of you have more experience with the light weapons than I do, because obviously a criticism someone could say is like, oh, this doesn't feel like an SCA sword at all. There, you can do like some LARP stuff where you're just kind of like squeezing with the fingers and snapping at it. Totally. And I feel like with the light weapons, there's two things. One is that you can at least focus on using proper technique. But I find that the real advantage is the defense is the same. It's coming in a lot faster and it's punishing you less. So even if your opponent, or even if half the time you're throwing shots, it's not really the right technique or not really like throwing an SCA stick, the defense is still the same. And you're really, I say this to any fighter that has a bad day. I was like, at a minimum, when you go to practice, you're seeing people throw shots at you and your brain is recording that and building like new, it's going to slow that down.
And you're safe. I mean, really the key in this is it's a very safe exercise. And when you feel safe, you can work on stuff. When you don't feel safe, that's your first worry. And to get rid of that piece allows you to learn faster.
Yeah, because the thing is, I can get hit in the wrist, by this exercise 40 times, and I don't care at the end of the evening. If I got hit with a rattan stick, even with good van braces 40 times at the end of the evening, I would be pissed off at somebody, at the very, very least. But and I probably potential being hurt, and so this gives the advantage of repetition without the risk of injury.
Oh, and real quick, so was it dark? Was it foam forge? What's the name?
Forge foam.
Forge foam. Yeah, so Forge Foam is where sells a lot of the stuff. Sven specifically recommends the foam bat, and the reason why it's a foam bat is that it's round, it has no edges, and it's just. He said they used to use the edge swords, and it just too many times you're hitting people with flat, and you're hitting edges of shields and it's chewing stuff up. So he goes with the foam bat. It looks like I think Brannos has a video where he shows how to make his own swords.
That one's been posted in the chat, so that's Sadb posted that in the chat for it. So, are we ready to move to the next one then?
Real quick, someone says basically a youth weapon. These are different than the youth weapons. Aren't the youth weapons a little harder?
No, actually, the youth weapons are a little softer. Most of the SCA youth weapons, they use a lot of pipe foam and things like that. We tended to. So my swords, the way I make them, are allowed as I use them as youth weapons. And I'm a youth marshal; they fit in the requirement. A lot of times for the lower classes, I have to put a kind of a butt spike on the bottom that's all foam. But other than that, Div 1, they're SCA useful because they're rattan. They fit all those categories.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
we've
now, if you buy them
of
online, they won't
weapons.
have a rattan core.
Yeah, they frequently have a carbon fiber core to them, and so you can use them for others training, but you can't use them they're not legal for youth combat.
Sadb, were you going to say something on that?
I was going to say it varies wildly. Like just me and Louis, our collection of foam swords, we have, my 7 or 8 ounce, half pound, what I call my safety sword or my physical therapy sword that has one of the little like carbon fiber tubes as its core. It weighs practically nothing. And it was what I was using when I was recovering from like really minor elbow surgery, but still technically surgery several years ago, all the way up to the 1-inch shaved rattan with foam around it youth weapon that weighs 1.5 pounds or something. So and we have one that's also a purchased foam weapon that lies somewhere in the middle, and all of them feel a little different and work a little different and can be good for different things. So it's kind of whatever works for you, or collecting a variety of them works real well.
Yeah. I always wear was it the street hockey glove when I do that stuff, because
Yep.
I had a bad finger injury a long time ago at a LARP, and I'm very nervous about that. So if anyone goes to the foam weapons, be careful. Just be smart about it.
All right, so after we had Duke Sven teaching that last day, we also then had Duke Donald who came back and was teaching how to fight like a lefty, or how to fight. So the fact that you can use all the tricks a lefty throws, whether or not you're lefty, but the kinds of things that work well for and against.
Yeah, and here we're just trying to help people understand what a lefty looks at, right? And I think the key here is that right-handers don't get that same opportunity as left-handers do. Left-handers fight a lot of right-handers. Right-handers, if depending on the area you're in, fight less left-handers. But so we wanted to give an opportunity to see what their bread and butters are, so that you can understand that those same shots are your bread and butter against a left-hander.
And since we're running out of time, I'm going to run us through the next couple here.
Yep.
The next one was pad drills. And Sadb, if you want to tell us a little bit about pad drills.
So this class was 90% focused on learning how to walk and throw a shot at the same time using a series of drills that are all based on this pad. And then there was another drill or two at the end that can be done with the walking or statically for like changing targets around and practicing following the opening, that kind of thing. We're running out of time, so I won't be real long-winded, but yeah, it's learning how to walk and throw at the same time smoothly, to throw right in time with your steps and get the power behind it, instead of having to, take a step, stop, throw, take a step, stop, throw, as most of us do by default without training this. So
yeah, and these pads are just basically boxing pads that boxing mitts that get used in boxing all the time. And you can see how it's used here.
And yeah, the series of drills takes you in literally every direction you could possibly move: forward, backwards, sideways, angles, etc.
So if you're looking for a set of the pads, keep an eye on your local thrift store. There's always kids getting out of martial arts, and they end up at the thrift store quite a bit. So you can find them pretty cheap there.
Or like play it again sports.
Yep. And again, this is a great exercise for people who maybe don't have armor yet, or even the ones that, you just want to get them get them good technique before you throw them into actual fights. And, you can see this, we're going free form now. There's changing angles. He's going forward. He's going sideways. He'll start going backwards. And so you not only have to figure out your timing on your feet, but also the angle changes or movement changes. So your body has to also change. So all those movements that we were doing before is added into this exercise.
And a lot of that's also keeping your hips square with your opponents all at the same time, not turning. And there's so many different things that this teaches you to put into play from all the other things. Yeah, like you said, all the other foot movement that we've done before. So we have one last video, and that was not actually during that. So that ends all the Peace Week videos. We had one event during War Week, which was then over with His Highness Thorfinn. So I don't know if this one's actually in the videos that you put up on the.
So actually, this one I posted up as a separate episode because it was kind of done like our episodes in the past. So this has been posted up for a little while. This really turned out very nice. I mean, there's His Majesty from the West. There were some wonderful people in this room. We're hoping to broaden and expand this. And the West is they're actually expanding their social area, and they want to do a lot more of this. I'm hoping maybe next year we kind of do go back. I've run one of them, and they used to run them all the time, and that is a Shiv roundtable where we discuss issues. We actually create cards, and we'll have 4 or 5 topics that we'll discuss over the night. And we'll just have a night. We all sit together, or a day we sit together and we talk about these issues, and everybody's just in a gathering area talking about those issues. And I'm hoping maybe we can get back to that. You can see their social area was very nice. We got Fabian there, and if you don't know his name, you should. That's His Grace Fabian. But there was a lot. His Grace Edward was in there. Guilluame was in there. Myself, Sir Roisin, Duke Morgan. Of course, His Highness was the West. Thorfinn was there, kind of running it. So there was a lot of great. Gerhardt was there. Count Gerhardt was there from Kaid. He was actually filming it, and that's what he does for a living. And he did a wonderful job with this. And we're hoping to be able to do something like this next year with somebody with a camera, kind of taking shots as the people are talking. You can see how we move around. And I'm hoping that we can get to a little bit more of this video style in the future.
I want to say that if I could recommend one Coach's Corner video to watch, if you haven't seen it yet, it would be this one. I listened to this on the way home from Pennsic, and I thought it was fantastic. I think this would be a great one to throw in because there's not a lot of visuals. You're looking at different people, but it's like, throw it in your car if you're going to an event. It's a good motivational thing. There's a lot of good information in it.
Yeah, I would agree. The conversation was wonderful. The whole spot was great. I'm hoping to present more things, opportunities like this at Pennsic, just like we presented the opportunities of all the classes. I'm hoping, with, the good part is we have a great group of people. Hopefully we'll expand that with people who can shoot video and help with even some of the web stuff and things like that. This is something that we're going to talk about next week, or I think it's next week episode. It's not only about Pennsic next week. It's about the channel in general and how we can make it better for everybody and maybe capture video better and do all of the kind of upgrade the channel a little bit. If people really think and use the channel and feel good about that they want to see it continue going.
So what you're saying is you don't think you did nearly enough last Pennsic.
What I'm saying is I have you now, so we'll be able to do twice as much.
But remember, I still have a job.
I had a job. I just had two jobs.
Okay.
Coach's Corner and my normal job.
But now you don't have your normal job.
I gotta say, man, I'm so impressed. You've got such a motor. I can't, I did one class and sat through Sven's class, and I was just all out of spoons for the day. And you just kept going on to the next class, motivating everyone. So they should give you like an award or something.
My reward is so besides us here, Barry, I got 3 rewards right on this screen right now.
Very nice, very nice, very nice.
So I'm lucky enough to see people, get where they, get to a point where they get to live a dream a little bit, and that's a reward for a good trainer, right? Hopefully.
There's 4 of us. I don't know which 3 you're talking about.
I'm not going to take responsibility for you, man.
You're someone else's fault.
Yeah. Every time I introduce my knight to someone, I say, here's my knight, Sir Bill. He taught me everything I know, which the funny thing is I got knighted, after 29 years of fighting, or I got squired 29 years after fighting, but no, he still did a great job.
All right. Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed the class, all the classes we presented. I mean, this is more just kind of review. Maybe it's not a deep dive or anything like that, but we wanted to give everybody an opportunity to see what we did at Pennsic, to post those up, and hopefully everybody gets a chance to watch them and we get some comments. I'm going to try to wrap up a little bit of everything that happened and get back to more Coach's Corner content. We have just give everybody a feeling for what's coming up. We have kind of a bit of a discussion about past and future, and some of that was based off of Pennsic. It was a lot of work. It was very hard. I'm not sure I could, the small group of us could keep doing it the way we're doing it, and I would like it to be better. But I want to make sure everybody really still wants it, and that everybody's getting something out of it. So we're going to discuss a little bit on past and future of Coach's Corner. And that means we're probably going to try to build a little bit of, better video, better production, all of those. I just mentioned to Bari about, he does a wonderful job on his YouTube channel, and there's some pieces I'd like to learn and maybe, have somebody help us on our YouTube channel, make it look better. We have, the more people that help build this community, the better it gets. So that's going to be next week. After that, we have attention and energy and analysis. And that one, Beth wanted me and Ronvalder to talk about that. Some of this was specifically around Heroic Champions fights. So it's kind of a review of what's happening and where we're seeing energy, and how we analyze what we have seen and what's going to happen. So Beth asked us to kind of cover that because there was a lot of talk about that in a number of fights. There's another one, Meet Atlantia melee training. Barry, I think you were the one that mentioned this one, and I got
to tell you, if you don't care about getting good content information and just want to have a lot of fun, that's the show to go to.
There you go.
I got to tell you, we got Prince Randall, who is a stand-up comedian. We got Duke Christoph, who is the funniest Southern you've ever meet, and then I think some of you met Tegan recently. It's just I hope we spend more time talking than laughing, so that'll be a fun one. But they got a lot of good stuff going on in Atlantia. They've really sort of turned things around with their melee practices, and I think there's a lot of things we can learn about it. And I hope people join and engage in the comment section, because we always like to hear the questions and comments from there.
Great. So we'll start putting that together, and that's going to be probably on 10/19, October 9th. And then a couple of other things that we were thinking about doing is, one is how fun can affect your training. And that really came out of a conversation or a video that was shown on the Coach's Corner's webpage and our Facebook page, and a lot of discussion around it. And actually we've been doing a little bit more of this at our practice, and actually a couple of other people had commented in that they were as well, and it really has seemed to help a number of groups. So we want to talk about that a little bit. I still have to get some coaches together for that one. And then down the line, we have leadership and mentoring. Some of that's going to come out of another book I just went through called Leader's Mind. That was another great book on, discussing that. But it's probably going to be a little bit in November when I can do a little bit more research on that. So we got a couple of good episodes on those pieces coming. If you want to see something else, please let us know. And probably another one in here is somebody wanted a interview with Duke Lars out of North Shield. And I think that's something we're going to try to put together as well. All right. So does anybody else have anything else to speak about?
I think so. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoy the videos. If you didn't have a chance to see them at War, this is a great chance to go through. And I know I'm going to be going back to Boomy's stretching exercises and going back through those. And I also know I'm going through the, Antigone's defense classes because I didn't pay enough attention. I was trying to do some pickup fights at the same time. So I want to make sure I get back to those because those, I know the parts I heard were incredible. So I'm glad now that those are up and available for everybody.
So Brannos, one of the commenters has asked if they have suggestions, how they do that.
So they can reach out to any of us, really. It's kind of funny. Bess kind of pulls a lot of those in, but they can reach out to any of the coaches. We all kind of get together. We have little meetings and things like that, and we discuss what people have brought up. You can post right on to the SCA discussion page. A little more open to others, but it's still it's a way to get it done.
SCA Coaches Corner discussion page.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. We also have an email you can send it to if you don't want to do it publicly. Either way.
Or you can send a self-addressed stamped envelope to.
Carrier pigeons are also,
So, but yeah, you can find myself. You can find me as Brannos on Facebook, and there's not too many Brannoses on Facebook. So, happy to hear what you're interested in. So,
all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and have a good night. And we will see you
next week
or in the other ones to come up.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, all.